So, I'm going to say thank you so much to Phil for facilitating and getting us all started up here. Phil's been a wonderful producer from Training Magazine, and he's going to monitor the chat, keep an eyeball out for all your questions, and interject when something really relevant is timely and help us move through this presentation. But I'm Nikki. I am the head of education impact at Google. And really, the intent of my role is to partner with our instructional designer, our learning sponsors, our organization to strategize and understand how do we know what we're doing is actually working? Is it adding value? How do we make determinations on what the next opportunity is? And how do we measure whether or not the work we're doing, whether people are actually learning, whether or not it's driving value, and where we should be going next, and doing that. Do I'm getting oh, I say some video is frozen for some people, audio and video is good for others. So I'm going to keep going, and then if you all are still having problems, let Phil know, and we're going to go ahead and keep proceeding and moving forward. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through a simple framework to help you all think through what data you should be reporting on, and really understanding that collecting data, reporting on it, and communicating it are very simply different exercises that intersect at different times, and they're really related to each other and how we do it at Google. And we're going to move you all through this methodology together. And so for us, we actually try to genericize it, that this is the way we think about it, regardless of whether you're a service, a learning designer, a, um, a go to market role, a program manager in our team. This should apply to wherever you are in learning and development or training. And because these are the essential questions we are trying to answer as you go through it. So, really, with reach, a lot of people will call this engagement, but it's really the meaningful reach around it. What types, how many, and what types of people are engaged with your project? And we use the word project because it could be a learning product, it could be some technology, or it could be a program, or it could be a actual training. So we use the word project pretty interchangeably here. But how many and what types of people are engaged in it? And we think about, we don't want to boil the ocean. How many are the potential audience? But what is your real target audience and what are you penetrating into it? So, how are they meaningfully engaging with it? And that's where a lot of people really kind of stop with their learning measurement. Oh my gosh, this many people enrolled, this many people did that. And going in there. Jason, so nice to see you. Jason and I worked together for many years. Quality. It's really, this is where our sphere of influence um, really works. This is where we do the most of engaging with the actual work product. This is where we really have the most influence over everything. So, how well are we serving that audience, and in what way? So, are people actually learning as a result of the training? Are they actually doing what we want to? Was their behavior change? Impact, that's what we all want. That's what the executives want. That's the word that gets thrown around. Impact, impact, impact. But what are they achieving? So, after they have learned, after you have done the learning intervention, are they applying those skills back on the job? If we're doing a sales training, are they then going out in the field and doing something? That's real impact that we are seeing. That's how we've articulated the difference between quality and then impact. It's once they've left our little nest, those baby birds have left our nests, can they actually fly? And then value, why do we care? How does that achievement affect us? So if it is sales, is, you know, uh, uh, if they are making the upsell, why do we want them to make the upsell? It is because there's revenue attached. So that's the revenue, productivity, efficiency gains. So we separated impact from value. It's the skills being applied, and then why do we care that those skills are applied? What does that gain back to the organization? So we separate it out into 4 categories for us to be able to discreetly just think about it. But there's a lot of blur between them. It's a continuum. And so it's just not helpful to think, oh no, I have to categorize, but these are general guidelines that we like to think through these things for us. And so for us, we start with the skills. These are the behavior changes that we want to see. And for us, a skill is a learnable, observable, and measurable behavior. And for us, that's really key to start off. We've all talked about learning objectives, we talked about capabilities. For us, we've really anchored on skills as the connective tissue between all of our different trainings and our different mentorships, between hiring and everything. This is the common language that links us all together. And for us, a skill is learnable and it can be acquired through training, practice, or experience, observable, and it can be identified by other people, and measurable. It can be objectively evaluated on a proficiency scale. That's why I don't love things that say understand. Oh, after this course, you'll be able to understand that, because it doesn't meet this criteria and it makes it very difficult for me to measure that impact. So for us, it can be expressed as a verb noun pair, like build a treehouse, dance the foxtrot, play chess. For us, things like scrambling eggs may entail buying the eggs, cracking the eggs, mixing the egg yolk and the egg white, cooking the eggs, and serving the eggs. Seems pretty straightforward. But then, even just buying the eggs may entail deciding how many eggs to buy based on how many people you're serving. Deciding what kind of eggs to buy based on your audience. Are there vegans attending? So you might need to buy an egg alternative. Are there people with moral and ethical obligations? So you might want to buy free range, cage free eggs. So understanding that there's judgment skills in there. So that decision is a difference in making it a skill demonstration. So here are other examples of skills: empathizing with the user, assessing the results of an A/B test. That's how you use your judgment and your discernment to see the results and turn it into a skill. And this actually starts us with the foundation of evaluation, and really identifying what the goals of your learning intervention are. So
Nikki? There was a question earlier from Donald. He said this seems similar to the Kirkpatrick levels. Is that intentional?
yes, so we actually very use the Kirkpatrick levels. We use our business, my background in behavioral economics, and the business environment we're in to inform this framework. It's actually very similar, but phrased in a way that business executives who aren't learning and development specialists can actually identify with. And so we actually pulled from Kirkpatrick, we pulled from McKinsey, we pulled from lots and lots of other places to come up with something that was very representative across the entire spectrum of all the people who might be involved in delivering this. Because not everyone who is on a learning team is a learning specialist. They might have transferred in from another department, have been a UX designer who got brought in, and we want to be representative and approachable and not use something that was so niche and specific to a learning team, because oftentimes you find the learning team rolls up to HR. The learning team might roll up to a technology team. And so you need to find something to relate to them in a way that speaks their same language. Um,
Yeah, great. And Kylie just also
yeah,
asks here, do you list out all of your objectives in your programs? It seems a little overwhelming to list all of these.
it definitely does. And I only do it when it's necessary, when it is useful. And ultimately, you will find that you're actually already listing these things out. You're just pulling it from other formats. You have your objectives already, you have your skills listed as the table of contents, the headers. This intellectual labor is already occurring, but it's occurring in a different format. So actually pulling it into the same format consistently and in a disciplined and rigorous format across all of your learning interventions will allow you to show and demonstrate in a very regular format um, your long-term impact very consistently. Now, does that take work? Most definitely. Would I say you have to do it all at once? Definitely not. Start with one, come up with a template and do it as you go along will actually help you establish a system and process going forward. So here's how we did it for new hire on. Here's an example of how you might do it for new hire onboarding. Did I go back into the history of everything? Hell no, definitely not. But here's where we're going forward for a pilot. So for some examples for a new hire onboarding, I chose a generic one that I thought a lot of companies might be able to relate to. Is explain, some skills for a new hire might be explain how the team operates. It's not understand the skill would be to share and explain how the team operates, explain the corporate structure, define the company's mission and values, identify sources for common questions and answers. The goal there would be, that way they're self-sufficient. They don't have to rely on asking their manager or their teammate all the time. I want my new hire to, you know, identify the sources, use the company wiki and Google and other things for their first couple common questions and answers. Try that first before they have to decrease the productivity of everybody around them. Troubleshoot basic problems independently. Contribute to a starter project without supervision. That's when I know they're truly independent and I don't have to babysit them anymore. Prepare your working environment tools. They can set up their laptop, they can set up their phone, they can do all that. That's how those are the skills I want a new hire to have, just as an example. And so once we have kind of the skills for this one training, do you have to do it for every training all at once? No. Just do it for the one training you're working on right now. Once I have those, I want to go, what are the questions I have about this training? What do my business questions have? Because really, Peter Drucker says the most serious mistakes are not made as a result of the wrong answers you're providing, but never asking the right question or asking the wrong question in the first place in doing that. So let's just try asking some questions together. Let's evaluate a puppy's health. Don't jump to a survey question. That's what we're all familiar with. We've taken a dozen surveys, we've written a dozen surveys. We often jump to a survey question, but we want to write an evaluation question. We want to think of a big, hairy question that cannot be answered by one metric. And they often start with to what extent. So the difference between a survey question and evaluation question is a survey question might be, hey, rate your dog's health on a scale of 1 to 5. How satisfied were you with this training on a scale of 1 to 5? Versus the question we really want to know about the training is to what extent or what we want to know about the dog is to what extent is your dog healthy? What we really want to know is to what extent was this training actually good? Was it doing its job? We can't answer that with that survey question. We actually need a lot more information to be able to answer that question. Another example is how many users have signed up for manager communities? Yeah, one metric will answer that question. But really, what we truly want to know is to what extent are our manager programs reaching the right audiences, the right managers at the right time? That's the much bigger question that we need to pull a lot of information together to answer. And, that other one is going to be a component of that larger question. And then, is a sales org an inclusive environment? Yes or no? But really, to what extent is this program we're running influencing the sales org to act more inclusively. Some of us are running DEI programs. So that's a little more of a complex question. So for us, in each of these categories, we can write what is our big existential question in that category. So to what extent is the new higher onboarding program reaching the right learners? That one might seem really obvious, but we'll get to that a little bit later on, because new higher onboarding, that's compulsory. Every single person goes through it. Quality, to what extent is onboarding providing education that is relevant? Should we be teaching this thing about how to do something really complex in new hire onboarding, or does that need to go out 6 to 9 months later? To what extent have learners grown their skills as a result of onboarding? If we're teaching and we're overwhelming it, they're actually not learning. They're not in a space to learn. To what extent have learners applied their skills as a result of onboarding? To what extent is new hire onboarding helping learners get more productive faster? That's the whole point of onboarding. So, but we need to examine what are the behaviors that would help us answer those questions. So, we're starting to build this map out a little bit. It's not just about asking the right question, but asking in the right way. Now, a doctor might ask you, "Hey, do you have trouble swallowing?" "But I've been swallowing this way my whole life." "I don't know." I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm fine. What are you talking about?" Um, and I'm gonna be honest, I got this example from a TikTok. I'm 38 on TikTok. What am I doing? But they made a really great point, because a better way to ask that question, because thinking about the behaviors of someone who is having trouble swallowing. Do you have to use a lot of, when you eat, chicken nuggets, do you have to use a lot of sauce, when you eat? Oh, well, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Or when you eat, does it kind of sometimes feel like it gets stuck in your throat? Oh, well, yeah. That happens pretty often. So it's thinking about what are the behaviors of someone who might have some trouble swallowing. So for behavior demonstration, to what extent is my dog healthy? Am I seeing weight fluctuations? Because I don't know. I'm not a veterinarian. Are there energy level changes? Appetite level changes, urine output changes? Those are the behaviors that would start to help me answer to what extent is my dog healthy? Now, thinking about something a little more complex and bringing it into our L&D domain, to what extent are manager programs reaching the right audiences? Are the targeted managers opening announcement emails? Okay, now we're reaching the right ones. Are the targeted managers clicking on banners? Are they signing up or waitlisting? We're targeting managers who are at this point in the career, not the executives, but the targeted managers. And are they waitlisting? Are they signing up but then dropping out? Are they completing? Are they clicking on the supporting resources? So we sent them, they completed, and we sent them additional resources, but they're not clicking on the supporting resources. Are they recommending it to other managers? Now we're starting to see that full picture. This seems so obvious, but if we're doing all this intellectual labor and we're never writing it down, how are we then going to connect the big picture to a full evaluation strategy?
And Nikki,
Yeah.
Alejandro asks, how long does it take for you to compile all the answers you're collecting to be able to tabulate it into metrics format to help you move forward?
I would say at the end of this, I'm going to share you a template that we've put together in collaboration with my team. We have a centralized team. Not all of you will have a centralized team to do this, but my team and the program team will work together. If you get it at the beginning when you are designing the program, it takes maybe a 3-hour session where we heads down work on this together to fill out the template end to end. And we're building it into the design of the program. And so it's just a part of our process. If you have already built the program and you're trying to back it in, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. So I think we'll keep going, and then we can talk about like what are the two channels the two paths in the woods that we might take based on this.
Great, great, and I'll remind people that, we'll also have a
Yeah.
Q&A at the end, and we'll get to questions that, might have been already posed too. Thanks.
Yeah. And then, you know, uh, something a little more vaguely, because there are qualitative and quantitative feedback work together. So, how is this program influencing the sales org to act more influencing? Do they feel, users who attended feel more included versus those who don't? Give users give others in a meeting the opportunity to listen by protecting their opportunity to speak. They provide attribution. They are encouraging points of view that disagree with them to speak up in meetings. So now we do the same thing for new hire onboarding. We have the question. Now, what are the behaviors that help us answer that question? Learners who are in their first 15 days are automatically enrolled in the program. And those who had an exception out of the first 15 days are enrolled by their manager. Now we have two behaviors that we want to see to help us answer that evaluation question. And then, to what extent is onboarding providing education that is relevant? We just ask them to, do you rate this as relevant? We get it from the managers and the learners themselves. And then we can look at, are they utilizing the troubleshooting tools we identified? Are they completing tutorial steps? And going, what are the behaviors that demonstrate that question? Learners rely on teammates less to solve simple problems. Learners can engage meaningfully in team discussions and projects. And so, what's the difference between a behavior and the actual metrics? The metrics are the countable numbers that would show up in a report. And this is where, if you have an engineering team, a data team, this is where these things show up in a dashboard. You can work with them to go, hey, I need access to these numbers. These are the specific numbers I require. So this one, it's their specific weight over time, their energy rating over time, their food usage and consumption. What's their depression score? What's their white blood cell count? Their cholesterol levels, the blood pressure. Now we're building a actual strategy versus kind of slapdashing things together. And okay, we talked about how, are they opening the emails? Well, now that's called a penetration rate, the email open rate. It's all very obvious. The distance between this is one cell over, but we're actually writing it down in a proper and disciplined manner. The banner click through rate, the attrition rate, the number of shares. And then this one, do they feel more included, is now just translated to the inclusion sentiment of participants versus non-participants. The percentage of interruptions that occurred in meetings before and after the program intervention. And then now we just translate it from percentage of new hires who are auto-enrolled in the designated time frame and the percentage of users who weren't auto-enrolled who are enrolled by their managers. We can see, oh no, there's a small group of people who aren't enrolled ever. And if we pull that all the way down to the impact, we can go, oh, there's an A and B group. The people who are enrolled in that 15-day time frame are more productive faster than the people who have to be enrolled later by their manager. Those people have lower sales numbers in their first 6 months because they aren't getting hit in the right time frame. They're not making the upsell on the phone call. They're not making the managers don't trust them quite as much to then be independently assigned to clients. Now we can actually go, there's an attribution model we can do because of doing the discipline of writing it down all the way up and defining those two populations. And then we go to the instruments. People try to start here. Oh, I need to write a survey. I need to get access to this data source. And you think it has to be perfect. If I don't have the perfect data, I don't have the perfect instrument, I don't start at all. My evaluation strategy is dead in the water. Really, we can start with the strategy and build and not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Because Now we go, what instruments do I need? I need a scale. I need to come up with a rubric to track my dog's energy level. Oh, it's low today and it's high. What does high mean? I need to write a food tracker. I need to come up with a depression survey and a rubric. I need to go get a blood test and blood pressure cuff. And then, oh, I need to go, these are the tools I need to start getting access to, or just request access to, and then let my manager know, this is what we have access to, and this is what I want to get access to. And I need to start building a meeting interruption tracker. Do I need software to do it? No, I could actually just start with a post-it note and then turn that into a tool, of an Excel handout. And then if that really works and has a lot of impact, then I can request a vendor to help me build something. So it's letting you prove on very small fashion and build upon that. And so with the new hire onboarding, what do we need to do to get those answers? We have a learning data warehouse, the HR data, pre and post assessments. We need to get access to how often people are using the tools. So now we can actually go, these are the things I need in concrete fashion to prove it out. And, you know, that's if we're doing an end to end deep dive into it. But if we started with just the manager survey, it's better than doing nothing and doing that. And really, my goal here is to manage expectations with my stakeholders because disappointment often arises when expectations don't match the outcomes. My, and then expectations often go unexplored and unexpressed. My stakeholders, my senior leaders who aren't L&D people, they don't realize they have a movie playing in their head. They aren't creators of education. They're just consumers. They had a teacher they really liked. And so they had this whole movie playing in their head. And when things don't match that movie, they didn't realize that they had that movie. And so my job is to go through this process and go through the skills and go through all of this to help them explore what that movie is so I avoid the disappointment in the first place in doing all of that. So I rushed through this pretty quickly, and this is when we are going through a end-to-end super detailed. I got into it at the design phase with my learning design team right from the get-go is in my perfect world how we would build an evaluation strategy. Now, how often does that happen? Not all the time. Oftentimes, these things are built and they come to me and like, Nikki, how do you measure this? And so I will say, here's what we do know. Here's what we do have access to. And so we're going to do the best we can. But again, starting with those questions, these are the deep, dark questions that our executives do have. And so going, okay, well, if that's the question, here are the behaviors, and here's what we do have access to. And here's the best we can answer your questions. So I know we have some questions, and Phil has done a really great job of collating them. Phil, what's your recommendation on how we go through it?
Well, let's start with Olivia's question. How do you collect thoughtful answers from people that don't want to provide feedback?
I think it is about knowing your audience. It really is about knowing your audience and holding that space for them because it's not necessarily about surveys and doing that. I like to think about collecting qualitative information on a continuum. If you have um, surveys, what you're going to do is you're going to collect a big swath of very shallow information. And if you do user interviews, you're going to collect a very little, but very deep information. So, what is the trade off you're willing to make? And the thing you have to realize is people are liars. People are damn dirty liars. And you're going to have to, and the whole point of doing an evaluation survey or evaluation strategy is, we're triangulating that information all the time. So it gets your learner information is triangulated against your manager's feedback against actual observational feedback, and it's all balanced out as much as we can, and we're not relying on just their social response, because we get what we call social desirability bias whenever we get um, survey feedback. So whether or not they even respond in the first place, how they respond, that there's all bias built into it. So we try and triangulate that as much as possible. So we take it all with a grain of salt, and then really holding it all in balance, and taking it with a grain of salt. So giving them as many opportunities as possible and keeping it as lightweight. For me, when I write surveys, I've stopped doing Likert. I don't do Likert responses anymore. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you do that? I keep it very labeled. Um, you know, it's I do a scale of, for example, how confident am to do this? I go, I'm super confident in this way. I'm less confident in this way. So everything has a specific label. And also, um, I'm doing lots of like thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, can I do this? Can I not do that? Check boxes. I've really changed up my survey strategy so that I keep it as lightweight as possible, and really not relying on actual open feedback at all anymore.
Very, very good. And, I can bring over the full questions if you'd like into the main view, and you can go through and pick and choose here, and then move on if you'd like.
Yeah, I
Okay, let's do that just because we have so many great questions
yeah.
here today.
tried I
S
tried to go through the presentation because I saw so many questions that were coming up. I tried to move through it a
Right.
little bit more quickly.
S And
Uh,
so, go ahead.
no, no, I was gonna ask you, what do you think we should ask next, Phil?
Well, Holly's question had a lot of people saying yes, great question. And that is, how do they rely less on coworkers than less than what? Is there a baseline? How does
Yes.
that account for other factors like work volume, manager style, individual preferences, etc.? Seems very subjective.
It is very subjective, and that is a great way. And so what we do is we don't rely on any individual. And we're not evaluating any one person. What we're doing is we're evaluating the program. I'm not evaluating, this is not talent management. This is program analysis. And so, what we would do is we would look at either a time split. So, before this program intervention and after this program intervention, and we would look at what we call the law of big numbers. So before, on average, the feedback rates were that, the general attitudes were that they were, um, requesting office hours, and they were requesting, the attitudes were that they were, uh, their, the teams were burdened by feeling burdened this much. And we're not saying that they are relying on their team members, that the team members are feeling like they are being asked by Nooglers um, this often, and this. And then after this new program rolled out, um, office hour attendance is down. Team members are feeling like they're being relied on less. And also, we're seeing that the Nooglers are utilizing the internal wiki more often than they were before. And they're doing these things. And we're seeing, um, you know, participation in the Noogler chat, and our internal Q&A system go up, and so that the whole intention is that we're using a multitude, a constellation of metrics to then respond to that question. So that the team member sentiment is only one signal of many to then answer, hey, do we believe that these Nooglers are acting more independently? So that is only one behavior of many that would then help us answer that big, hairy question. So that's why it's a big, hairy question. What are all the potential behaviors that would demonstrate that they are acting more independently than before? Does that make
Ver
sense?
It does, it does. And Nikki, do you wanna take one more question here and then move on, or, we can
Yeah.
just all right. Well, let's see. Like Taruna has a group of questions. We might as well
Yeah.
explore that. And what are the specific and obvious connections that you draw between the skills, behaviors, and the business? How
Mhm.
does the evaluation framework tie back to these operational metrics? And then further, for your organizational context, how many indicators are too many? And curious, do you evaluate every training, learning, intervention using this framework? Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with how do we tie it back to operational metrics? So, really getting to, we have standards that we start with where everybody has, what we've done is we've defined one normalized metric in every single category. And at minimum, every single program is required to tell us their version that they contribute to that. So that is what we do for roll up reporting up to executives. So for us, it's like, percentage skills growth. So for a computer science one, it's, they increased in this specific skill. Whereas for a leadership one, they're seeing skills growth in this other way. What is your version of that normalized skill? Now, for some programs, they're very mature, they have a very high metrics maturity rating. They have a ton to contribute to that. For newer ones, they're still in pilot mode. They haven't done the work. So not all of them have gone through the full rigor and discipline. And there's no expectation of it because this, you know, I'm a big believer that nothing is ever done. You live in a cycle. And so we have built in mechanisms to reflect that and reflect where you are in the cycle and doing that. So, you know, does every value, training and learning use this framework? They do eventually at some point during their cycle. They have some reach number, they have some impact number, they have some value number. But how strong, how big, how normalized that number is a lot of variation. There's a lot of variation. Some of them, there's just NA. They don't drive value, and that's okay. There's no expectation of a feel good, program that we do for certain things to drive revenue, and that's not a problem. But they have to let us know that that is not the expectation, and so there is a slot in the reporting for them to report, and they have to put NA in doing all of that. Now, as to how do we tie it back to it, it's that there is a discussion on, is your program intended to drive efficiency, productivity? How is that relationship driven? So, you know, it is, how are the skills applied in the job is in the impact category. And then why do we care, that why do we even want them to apply that skill is in the value. And so that is how we draw that line back to operational metrics. So why do we care about that skill and what is the behavior in doing that? So it's going through the discipline of that process and going, oh, we want people to code more efficiently because it saves us money. Okay, that's the connection. Oh, we want people to feel more included because it reduces attrition rates. And so that's the connection back to operational metrics. And so that's how we can start to think through it. It's about just taking the moment to go, why do we care? Why do we care that people have good leadership skills? Oh, that means that they're less likely to leave the company, or people are more satisfied, and it reduces risk in this way. That's why we care. So that's how we drive the connection back to our larger operational metrics. And how many are too many? I would say start with just a few. And we actually have a little And you'll see in the handout, we have a difficulty scale. And that's what we use for deciding our prioritization. It's, is this indicator available now and it's challenging to pull, or it's not available now but it's easy to pull? And that's how we just prioritize our time. Like, we are ruthless in how we prioritize our time, and don't try and boil the ocean. Just start with what is useful to help you answer your question. And as soon as you have enough to actually feel good and confident about answering your question, move on to the next question. Just focus on your priorities.
Very good. So why don't we go ahead and continue, and I'll bring this back
Mhm,
over at the end of today's session. Thanks.
mhm. I saw one that is, value is not return on investment. It is for certain programs. It's not for all programs. So it all just depends on what you're running. And so, for some programs, we've decided that it's not about returning money back to our program. So I would say, I would question that for your organization. Is that a useful demonstration? For us, some of our programs are purely for social impact. And so I didn't want to make that judgment call for your organizations if that is what value means to your organization. That you would have to work with your stakeholders to determine if that's what value looks like for your organizations.
And Nikki, I'm sorry. Did you want to just go ahead and continue? We're at the
Oh,
full
no,
Q and
sorry.
A.
I just
Okay.
saw that last one.
Okay. And do we? I'm sorry. Do we have more slides here for?
Oh, no, those are all the slides.
All right. I just want to. I'm sorry. Just wanted to make sure that we didn't have another couple slides. So let's go ahead and just continue to look at questions here, because
Yeah.
we had such a great dynamic discussion going on here, and people sharing ideas and
Yeah,
thoughts.
that was my
Uh,
intent. It was, I really wanted to get to the questions. I could have spent more time on, like, really reading through each individual slide, but I saw so many questions pop
right.
up that I skipped. I kind of breezed
Th-
through the slides to get to the questions.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's right. No worries.
Mm,
And this is time well spent, because there are so many great questions here coming through from all the members. Maybe work from the bottom up here with Sheila.
yeah.
So this is a really good evaluation worksheet. And thanks for sharing it. I'm teaching a workshop on evaluation on AEA conference in June. Is it okay to share with the participants?
Yes, Jason and I have worked together. Jason was one of my partners, uh, at Google ages ago, and I really, really value Jason. And so anything Jason shares is gold, 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 gold. So uh, a lot of what I have done is definitely uh, uh, informed by Jason, and very, very similar. And I appreciate Jason's um, perspective here. Is there any measurement on the impact of scientific training other than assessments? So, one thing that I want to clarify is there's a difference, at least in our world, on assessment and evaluation. So we really, when we use the term assessment, we use that to say, like, there is a discrete event to assess the knowledge of someone, whether it be an exam, a quiz, something built into the learning design. And then evaluation is the entire process, which includes observation after the fact. It can be a passive observation, it could be feedback, it could be the user's own self assessment in doing that. And so evaluation is the, I would say, the umbrella term, which might include assessment and might include other things. In doing it, there is some um, research conducted on the impact, but again, everyone uses the word impact to mean different things. So for us, there is some research on that we've published from, I think it was an IEEE for our organization on what the impact is on evaluation, like how we have seen increases in productivity um, for training. So it's not necessarily um, uh, in of the assessment, not the actual occurrence of the assessment, but we've seen like, oh, those who participate in these kinds of trainings and this, particularly our onboarding, we've seen them reach what we call a cruise speed faster than those who do not engage in what is a non-compulsory project-based learning onboarding, technical onboarding for our organization. And so they reach cruise speed faster than those who do not participate in it. And so we had analyzed that cruise speed by are they being assigned high priority bugs? You don't assign high priority things to people you don't find independent and you don't feel confident in. Their own self-assessment of their abilities, their manager's assessment of their abilities, the code that they are submitting, their actual activities, how many rounds of review does their code have to go through, and those types of things. So there is no actual formal assessment of their proficiency of a skill. We're not making them take a test, so we're not making them do anything. So we have seen the impact of that pay off dividends in our organization. Can you
Very,
share?
very. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that was a big deal for us. It was a really big
Yes.
deal when we were able to see, oh wow, like training and changing the style. We went away from a lecture style training to a hands-on project-based adaptive training and seeing that it actually made measurable impact into how fast we were able to get our Nooglers productive. Um, can you share an example of effective measurement approach for leadership program aiming to develop basic leadership skills? So, we have things in our organization called like the Google School for Leaders. We have something called Impact, and they're at targeted at different levels of leadership. And leadership is one that's particularly challenging to measure because what is a leadership skill? And I think that is an area where we have to be very specific about what skills we want to be demonstrated. Do we want to see our leaders, you know, empathize with our thing? And do we want to see them anticipate, evaluate upcoming changes and anticipate, what the risk might be based on those evaluations. So that's an area where actual formal assessments might be worth examining for a leadership program to understand whether or not A, your leaders actually learn anything, and B, how might you change that leadership program. And that one, we really rely on scenario based um, uh, assessments. And really, it's not about whether or not they made the right decision. Larry Blubin is the CEO of a company and this scenario came up. What do? You put them through the leadership training and you go, what do you do now? And it's not whether or not they choose to fire a person or let the person go, whatever. It's did they exercise good judgment and discernment in there? So, okay, well, I want to bring in an external investigator and I want to read all their messages and I want to, consult these people. What decisions are they making prior to making a final outcome is what we want to see and evaluate and going, okay, what choices do they make along the way? And that is where we can see, oh, did they really leverage the skills that we try to impart with them in the leadership training? And so that is one way where we can see was the training quality. So that's at the outcome of the training. Now, for the impact, we can check in with their leadership, we can check in with their team. we have at Google, manager uh, we do manager surveys so that the team can give feedback on their manager. We do those annually, and then we also do annual company-wide surveys so we can go, hey, leaders who go through this leadership training have higher manager ratings, have higher, we call it Google Geist ratings than those who do not engage in this survey, as well as they have lower attrition rates. They have lower turnover rates. They have, team members who are overall, their inclusion scores are higher. So we can start to develop a little A B comparison for those who participate in the leadership training and who don't. And then also, they recommend the training to others. And also, they come back and they read the handouts and the follow up connections that we do. So there's a way to measure the impact and the effective um, efficacy of our leadership training without having it be, did you like it? How'd you feel about it? There are ways to develop extra interesting hooks into a leadership training if we take the time to be very deliberate on defining what skills we want them to demonstrate. How
Great.
do
We
you
still
Yeah.
Nikki, we have so many questions coming in. I think we're going to need to have you back for sure for a second session. This is
This is
so
hard
dynamic.
work. It's
Yes.
hard, and there's a reason why, when I started at Google almost 10 years ago, there was no one doing this work. There was like Jason and a few team members over here. There's, no, and over the last 10 years, we've decided to create a whole centralized team with an engineering side, with everything, come up and really dedicate to this and develop products associated with this because this is really difficult and challenging work. So the goal was to give you all a copy of the slide deck so you could actually like sit and digest and process it, as well as a handout where it is a template that we've sanitized for you all to go, oh, let me just try it with with one course. Let me try it with one training to see if I could measure this one training end to end really well. And just, give it a shot and see if I can actually apply this methodology.
Great. And is there a place where they could reach out to you, Nikki?
I'm
For
always available on LinkedIn, and my email is also provided in the handouts as well.
Oh, very good. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Because I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to get to all questions. I'm trying. Let's pick out. We've got a few minutes remaining here. Catherine just asked, can you share what scenario-based e-learning knowledge checks you have used?
Um, so what scenario based e-learning checks? It was like, um, so we internally we build our own custom software, which is a little bit challenging to translate outside. We started to partner with some vendors who are really really great. That's why I've actually worked with ELB, who's actually sponsoring this training, to come up with those scenario based checks. Where is one? This was with a different partner, but it was for fairness and ethics. And are people aware of their gaps in their fairness and ethics, data fairness and data ethics? Where it was a scenario where it looked like a fair and a fair game, like a fairground game where they were collecting ducks. And, we let them collect all the ducks in the game and doing that. And then they go, oh, did you notice that you collected more blue ducks than red ducks? And it's like, that's because you had something called centricity bias and you were collecting all the ducks in the middle. Now, teaching them about that centricity bias and going, and letting them know and letting them try the game again and then seeing were they able to collect um, the ducks more evenly and evenly dispersed. And so giving them opportunities to it didn't feel like an assessment, but there was a baseline that we collected, gave them the education on what potential bias could occur, and then letting them have a decision point and collecting that data again in another assessment and seeing if it improved. So saw whether their performance increased after a piece of education occurred. So very similarly in scenarios, letting them experience it, letting a scenario occur, how do they handle it, giving them the intervention, explaining why it's hard, and then letting them experience that intervention again and trying to have it. That's where really good creative learning design is so hard and so necessary. Having it feel organic and not feel like a test or an assessment occurs in the first place. Having it be really creative.
Great. And let's sneak in one more question here that Lori and I believe it was also by Ruben earlier. Are there examples of a survey you did for a past course?
Ooh, I'm actually going to search for it right now. Machine learning. Ooh, no. Yes, NGU. I'm going to pull up my survey question bank and share
Did,
my hands down favorite survey question with you all. Um, it is, and I
uh,
asked this question before, after, and then 6 months after, um, uh, uh, before, after, and 6 months later, um, for uh, a specific skill that is taught, and is, you know, rate your ability in each of the following blah 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 tasks. And so it for this one, it was like take a basically working model and make incremental improvements to it. That's a really critical skill. Um, and then I have them rate it on. I have no idea where to start doing that. I could do it with someone's help. I could read docs and figure it out myself. I could do it mostly from memory, and I could teach others from memory, mostly from memory. And that is a survey question that I expect no one to know how to do anything with it from before the educational intervention. Then afterwards, they're feeling confident. I could do this. I could do this myself. And then they get out on the job 6 months later and they try to do it, and their confidence plummets. I call that the reality check. And that's what we expect to see. But we're asking multiple questions. And we see that, and I plot that on a chart and I go, huh, this one skill, they don't have the same climb as the other skills. Is that okay? Is that expected? Should we invest more energy in teaching that skill? Or you know what? That skill we don't really care about, so it's okay that the slope isn't as high as the other skills. And reflecting on that. And then but we also ask that question to their managers. And oh, why is their confidence so high but the manager's so low? And also, their confidence is really high, but their demonstration of it is actually very low. So, are we doing something wrong to see that their confidence is really high, but their demonstration is really low? Or vice versa. They're demonstrating it, they're killing it, they're doing it really great, but their confidence in their ability is really low. So that's why it's important to triangulate all the different sources, both the qualitative and the quantitative. Because if there's misalignment in that, then something's off and something's going wrong. And it can help us refine what skills we need to teach or refine when we need to teach all of that.
Nikki, I can't thank you enough for a fantastic session. It looks like we could be here for the whole day, actually, and just
Mhm.
continue this topic and discussion. There's so much to know and so much to be learned, and you've shared so much today. Thank you for an exceptional presentation here today. And there is a new pod for people to put in their most useful ideas or takeaways. If you will take a moment and put that in, and you can also print out a certificate of participation today and continue the conversation in Training Magazine Network with each other. Just click on the link for today's event and you'll see the blue insights widget, and then there are instructions there for printing out that certificate of participation and sharing your insights and thoughts with each other in Training Magazine Network. Nikki, well done. What a fantastic session here today. I'll make sure that you get the questions
Please,
that we couldn't get to, and
please.
so we can develop part 2 and maybe 3. Who knows, right? And also, we'll make sure the chat is posted because there's so much great exchange of ideas and concepts also within the main chat with today's recording. And look for that recording to post a little bit later today here in Training Magazine Network. Nikki, thank you again for a stellar session here today for our members.
I really appreciate it. And please let me know if you have any questions about the handouts. I really appreciate ELB Learning for being such a great partner in all of this. And I will try to answer as many questions as possible. Really, I want to get through the slides as quickly as possible so that you all just have a copy of them and you can read them on your own time, because I think the questions were very, very interesting along this topic.
Absolutely. Nikki, thank you again. I want to thank all the members for attending today's event. We're going to leave the room open here for a bit so you can continue to put your ideas or most useful ideas and takeaways in. And Nikki, a lot of thank yous and accolades coming through, and again, well deserved. Thank you so much for a fantastic presentation.
Thanks, everybody.